How's it going, guys? Hope you guys are having a great week. So I'm back today with a new video. It is great to be back, guys, and I thought today I would actually weigh in on Horizon Forbidden West. So obviously over the last 2 weeks I haven't been able to actually record anything because I wasn't able to talk, and that's kind of given me a little bit of time just to rest and kind of catch up on some games. And I finally beat Horizon Forbidden West, which was one of my most anticipated games to come out this year. I'm a massive fan of the Horizon series. Horizon Zero Dawn was one of the best games on the PlayStation 4, and I was really looking forward to where they were going to take the story and explore more of the world. Now, I know it's 2 months late is this review, but this is actually a 100% completion review. So I've put about 80 hours into the game and I've beaten everything that the game has to offer. I've explored everything, and so I thought I would bring that experience and that insight into this review and what I thought of everything that the game has to offer, and whether or not I actually think it is a worthy sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn. I have to say that after my 80 hours with the game, I really enjoyed it. It builds upon the original in pretty much every way. There were some changes I will get into that I didn't really like, but for the most part I really enjoyed my experience with it. But let's kick off with the story, because that's always the most important part of any game for me, because as you guys know, I'm a story-based gamer. And I have to say that the story in Horizon Forbidden West was pretty decent. Now, I'm going to keep this spoiler free. I won't be going into any specific details of the story, but it's a pretty good story. It has some really interesting twists and turns, which I really didn't foresee coming. It picks up straight after the events of Horizon Zero Dawn. We kick off with Aloy, and after defeating Hades, now we're on this mission to try and find a copy of Gaia to ultimately save the planet. The planet is slowly dying and it's being infected by this kind of disease which is killing all of the animals and the plant life, and you know, making food and resources more scarce. And Aloy ultimately is in a race against time. The story did go in a direction I was expecting. There were a couple of story threads that were mentioned in the first game that are expanded upon in this, and I really enjoyed it. At the beginning of the game, it was really cool to sort of see a little bit of the repercussions of some of Aloy's earlier actions in Zero Dawn, and the whole theme of the game really for Aloy is it kind of explores her weaknesses and her arrogance and the pressure that's kind of on her, this belief that she's the only one that can save the day, and she's a bit of a lone wolf, and that actually has some repercussions. And as she plays through the game, I think she kind of comes to terms with that and realizes that she can't really do this alone. I thought the second game did a much better job of actually fleshing out the companions and the side characters, and I really enjoyed that direction. We got some returning favorites. So Val is back, Erend is back as well, two of my favorite characters from the first one. But there were some nice new companions that Aloy meets throughout the main story. The game did a good job of using them as a way to introduce their tribes, and it definitely gave me vibes of Mass Effect, you know, in that after completing main story missions, you could actually talk to each of these companions and they would kind of react to things and Aloy would interact with them. They also have their own sort of loyalty missions that you can do. So I felt that some of the best storytelling was definitely through Aloy's interaction with the companions. The main story thread itself is okay. I enjoyed it and I thought it was pretty well paced, but I have no idea where it's going to go. The game does kind of end on a little bit of a cliffhanger, and it is going in a very sci-fi direction, which I wasn't expecting at all, but I'm intrigued to see where it's going to go. I have no idea where it's going to go, and that kind of prospect for me is kind of exciting. So I am looking forward to a sequel, most definitely. What I will say though is some of the best storytelling in the game was without a doubt the side cast of characters. There is of course the main story thread, but there is a lot of side story missions, and the side story missions introduce some fantastic characters in the world and some locations and areas, and they really do a lot to flesh out the world and make it feel vibrant and alive. In fact, some of the best storytelling can be found in the side missions, so my advice is do not skip these are very important. They do a lot for world building, and they also link into the main story. Some of these side characters that you meet in the world do actually appear through the main story campaign, and I like the little attention to detail. There are even moments where you do certain side missions and you meet certain characters, and you'll go and talk to someone and they will reference that. So your side missions and the actions that Aloy takes and what she does, you do very much feel like you're having an impact on the world. So I would absolutely say that don't sleep on the side missions. They're really, really good. It isn't on the level of The Witcher 3 or Mass Effect. It's not that level of storytelling, but it's a little bit below that, I would say, but it's still pretty decent, and I definitely think it was superior to Horizon Zero Dawn, so I think they have improved. I would say the only main issue with the story is the villains. So I felt that the villains in the game were done a little bit dirty. I would have liked a lot more development for those villains. They do feel very black and white in the way that they're represented. They're, you know, evil for evil's sake. Like Regala, for example, they really dropped the ball with her. I wanted more development, even in the story, if they had jumped in terms of cutscenes to those villains and to get a little bit of like where they're coming from. So I felt that the villains really did drag down the overall story, and they could have been a lot better than the way in which they were represented or the way in which they were written. So, you know, when I did beat them, yes, I felt good, but it wasn't as, say, satisfying as, say, talking down a villain. Like, say, for example, to give you a Mass Effect equivalent, Siren was a very well written villain. They're not to that level, they're not to that standard, and I do feel that they could have been developed a lot better for the game, and that's probably why my overall score will be a little bit down in terms of the story. I feel like the villains could have been developed a lot better than they actually were. Let's talk a little bit about the world and the visual design. This game is hands down gorgeous. I mean, some of the locations, there are different biomes that you get to explore. It's quite varied, from snow-capped mountains to gorgeous rivers and lush forests to dry arid deserts. So there are, you know, variety of biomes. The lighting effects in this game were just so gorgeous, and there were so many moments where I just kind of had to just stop and really take it in. Now, the world is definitely open world, absolutely. However, what I will say is, yes, exploration is a large part of this game, and the map is massive, and it can feel a little overwhelming in terms of just how much there is to do in this world. Definitely, you know, there were moments where I got kind of Ubisoft vibes, you know, in just of how much side content there is to do. But even with this exploration, there are definitely Metroidvania elements to it. And by that, what I mean is there are certain areas that are locked off until you progress the main story and gain certain abilities and equipment to allow you to delve or explore into those areas. So what I would say is with the open world exploration is absolutely do it, you know, as you're exploring, because it will give you resources, it will unlock missions and things, but don't do too much, because there are inevitably going to be places that you can't go into because you need a particular equipment. So I think almost you don't gain access to everything that you need until quite late on in the main story campaign. And I did find myself getting a little bit frustrated as I was exploring the open world, and I get to something and find it, and then I go, oh crap, I can't unlock that because I don't have what's needed. So I would inevitably have to come back to that later. But the world is beautiful, and there is a lot to see, a lot to do. Some of my favorite side content that you can do in terms of exploration mentioned was definitely, you know, the cauldrons are back as well. Tall necks and hacking tall necks to open up areas of the map, those are back as well. And also we have underwater exploration, so there are, you know, water ruins and caves that you can dive down into as well once you gain access to the special breather unit. And what I will say with the cauldrons and the tall necks is these were some of my favorite exploration options in the game, because not only do they unlock abilities, so, you know, cauldrons will give you the ability to override certain machines, which can be really, really useful, but actually I felt that they improved on the cauldrons massively. There is a lot more puzzle solving within the cauldrons in terms of exploration and how you actually work your way through these cauldrons. And then I would say that each of the cauldrons felt uniquely distinct and different and required different skills to be able to progress through them. So there was a really cool underwater cauldron where you had to kind of lower and raise the water levels to progress. The cauldrons were some of the highlights for me. Same with the tall necks. You know, it wasn't just a case of, you know, climbing up somewhere to jump onto the tall neck. Some tall necks you actually had to work out how to get onto it. So I felt that the tall necks were also massively improved, and you did need a lot more thought and a lot more sort of ingenuity and investigation to be able to get past these sections. So those were definitely some of the highlights for me. There were other things that you could do, like rebel camps, for example, and rebel bases. The rebel bases was probably better, I would say, than the camps, because that did actually have a side mission thread to it, so there was a little bit of a story to that, which made it a little bit interesting. But then there's other things in the world like gauntlet runs where you can, you know, enter races on machines. There's obviously the hunting grounds that returns as well. There is mini games like Strike, which is kind of like a chess style game, and, you know, there's a melee pit where you can actually enter to learn new melee attacks and melee skills. And then ultimately there is like this arena, which is kind of like a Colosseum style arena where you take on, you know, more and more challenges. There's a lot to do in the game. Like, I will definitely say that you're gonna get high value for money without a doubt. There's so much content to do, but not all of it is interesting. There are definitely certain things I didn't really enjoy. Like, I didn't find myself enjoying gauntlet runs or looking for certain visual points. The rebel camps, there's just too many of them. I didn't really play that much Strike. I played a couple of matches of it, but, you know, it didn't really hook me, say like Gwent did in The Witcher 3. So some of the side missions and side content are better than others. What I will say though is, if you do persevere and you do complete all of the gauntlet runs or all of the hunting grounds, you are actually rewarded for that. You do actually get a really sweet legendary weapon. So there is, other than playing it and XP and experience, there is another benefit, you know, and reward for actually spending the time to complete those. So that's definitely good for sure in a way. Let's get to the gameplay, because I know this is a huge part for many people. Let's start off with parkour. So in Horizon Forbidden West, they obviously tried to make Aloy a little bit more fluid in terms of her parkour, so she can now actually clamber up cliff faces. If you scan with your focus, this actually reveals little yellow things on the rock, and that shows you where you can do your handholds. But the parkour and the climbing, for me, it felt a little bit janky. It didn't feel as refined as it could have done, and there were moments where, you know, I wanted Aloy to climb up or to move right, and she just would not do that. The grapple though was a fantastic addition to the game. It really was. Like, it gave you so many options in terms of puzzle solving, you know, from pulling down grates to pulling down beams to jump onto, to using it as a way to hook shot onto something and pull yourself towards a cliff. Yeah, the actual grapple was fabulous, and there were even some high points in combat where you could grapple up onto something to get a little bit of height. The glider was also a fantastic addition to the game, because that did mean that you could just leap off of mountains and cliffs and glide down, and some beautiful visuals from being able to do that. And it also felt amazing too, and particularly if you do fall or jump off in the wrong direction, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to fall to your death. So that's very, very nice. Let's obviously talk about the combat and the machine designs. So there are so many new machines in this game. There's some fabulous new machines which looked just absolutely incredible. They were very cool to fight. They all have their own weaknesses, and combat was greatly improved. We obviously have Aloy's bread and butter, her hunter bow. They are back, but definitely the sniper bow was nerfed, and some new weapons were introduced, like the war bow, the spike thrower, the shredder, which like throws out these little like circular things which can be used to kind of tear parts off of machines. Some of the new weapons were really cool. Like for me, I really enjoyed the spike thrower. That was fantastic. And yeah, just the warrior bow too was just rapid and really cool. And obviously we have new ammo types as well, like plasma, for example. And obviously we've got returning favorites like, you know, frost and fire and acid. But yeah, combat felt a lot more fluid, and you did feel that you had so many options in every fight that you went into. Often I found myself starting off stealthily and trying to sort of dwindle down the pack and take some machines out quietly by sneaking, you know, into grass. But then obviously if things went very, very wrong, which they often do, you had plenty of options at your disposal to be able to take down some big machines. Like there are some monsters in this game, and it definitely has a Monster Hunter vibe, you know, in this idea of targeting certain parts and breaking parts and tearing parts off machines to either use them against them or use them to craft new weapons and new parts. There definitely was a more expansive leveling system. Aloy can now choose to sort of specialize in terms of skill trees, from warrior to hunter to trapper to infiltrator to survivor, and you can choose, you know, where to spend your points and where to spec into depending on your preferred play style. I myself went down the hunter, which is the archer, and the infiltrator, which is the stealth builds first, and then kind of, you know, really leveled those up. Some nice new additions as well were some new abilities, so you get access to valor surges, and each weapon type has its own abilities as well. I think each weapon type has 3 abilities that you can unlock, and then for valor surge, this is like a special power basically that you can unlock, and these things can give you things like temporary boosts to your shield, or potentially a boost to critical damage. So the valor surges were very cool, and you can choose, you know, when to use those in combat, and they could really change the tide of a fight for you. So I liked all of these new additions. Melee combat is a lot more developed in the second game compared to the first game. It's very clear that the developers were really trying to introduce more in that. In the first game it was just light and heavy attacks, whereas in this, you know, there are actual combos that you can do. But I still felt that melee was very underpowered compared to ranged attacks. Melee was only really an option when going against other human characters. It wasn't so useful against machines, unless smaller machines, which you could use the charged attack on to knock down and then do a critical strike on. But melee was fun, you know, the little bit that I spec'd into it, and I did enjoy, you know, doing some of the melee, especially against the human characters, which was really, really cool. One of the biggest issues I did have with the game though, one of the new changes I didn't really like as much, was crafting and customization. Crafting for me in Horizon Zero Dawn was one of the weakest parts of the game, and unfortunately I didn't feel it was massively improved in Forbidden West. You obviously can highlight components and parts off of machines, and then you tear these off, or you kill certain machines to get particular parts. You have to use these as well as money to purchase weapons or armor sets from merchants, and then each of these can actually then be leveled up at a workbench. But I actually found that particularly when you got to the higher end gear, like legendary weapons and legendary armor, that the level of resources needed to be able to level it up made it really, really difficult to do that. Even playing 80 hours in the game, I think I only leveled up my legendary weapons and armor sets like once. That is all I could afford to do it. And if I wanted to level it up to, you know, the 4th or 5th level, I'd have to do a lot of grinding and a lot of killing machines. Now, some people may well really enjoy that. And, you know, particularly if you're a Monster Hunter fan, that's probably going to be an element of the game that you really enjoy. But for me personally, I felt that the balance really was off, and it got a little bit annoying. So I think by the end of it, I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to get a good weapon, enough to be able to progress through the story and the side content, and not worry about sort of maxing out all of my weapons and armor sets. Whereas in the first game, it didn't take much to be able to get some of the best armor sets and weapons in the game, whereas in Forbidden West it felt more difficult to be able to do that. And yeah, I feel that they still need to look at tweaking the balance there. But overall, I felt that Horizon Forbidden West was a really good game. I really enjoyed my time with it, and I would absolutely recommend it to anyone that is interested in playing it. The world is fantastic. I enjoyed the story, and some of the new additions and improvements were most definitely welcome. I am very interested to see where the story is going to go. I am anticipating that we're going to be getting some kind of DLC content, and when that does come out, I will be absolutely interested in streaming that for you guys. If you have any questions about Horizon Forbidden West, anything I haven't mentioned that you're interested in, please do post those in the comment section below. Let me know what your thoughts are if you have played Forbidden West and what you thought of the game. If I was to give it a score, I probably would give it quite a high score, 8.5 or 9 out of 10. There were some performance issues. There were not a lot, but a little bit. Sometimes things, you know, loading in a little bit later, and I did have one occasion where the game kind of hard crashed and I had to reset my PlayStation 5, which was kind of annoying. But generally speaking, my experience with the game was pretty smooth. I think if they made some improvements with definitely the crafting and the customization in terms of leveling all of that, making that a little bit less grindy, I probably would have enjoyed that element of it a little bit more. But certainly, you know, you're getting a lot of value for your money here, and definitely Horizon Forbidden West was a worthy successor to Horizon Zero Dawn, and I'm very interested to see where they're going to take the story. So those are my thoughts on Horizon Forbidden West. Let me know what you guys think of this review in the comment section below. Please do support the channel by liking, commenting and subscribing if you haven't already done so. I will be back with more video content soon in the future, so please look forward to that. So many games I'm playing at the moment, guys, to try and get them completed and then hopefully review them for you all. But yeah, please look forward to that in the future. Hope you guys having a great week. Of course, take care, and as always, happy gaming. Bye guys.